You have already seen yourself avoiding social events or meetings with friends for fear of intestinal embarrassment? That distressing feeling of not having control over your intestines. Who keeps him stuck at home, near a bathroom? If you have more than 60 years and faces this problem of fecal incontinence, know that it is not alone. Fecal incontinence affects approximately 15 to 18% of people in this age group that live in community and up to 50% of institutionalized elderly, becoming not only a physical problem, but a true sentence of social isolation and loss of self-esteem. The good news? The solution to this embarrassing problem can be much more close to what you imagine, directly on your plate. Recent research reveals amazing connections between certain foods and the health of the system, gastrointestinal, especially in the most mature body. In this article, we will explore 5 specific foods with scientifically proven properties to combat fecal incontinence in people over 60. It's not about magic cures, but of strategic food options with bioactive compounds that directly influence the physiological mechanisms of intestinal function, restoring the control and dignity you deserve. Why does fecal incontinence increase after 60 years? Before we dive into foods that can transform your intestinal health, it is fundamental to understand why fecal incontinence becomes more common with the advance from age. After 60 years, several factors contribute to the increase. This problem: weakening of the pelvic floor muscles, natural support for the rectum that loses tone with aging, decreased rectal elasticity, the rectum loses distension and contraction, efficient changes in rectal sensitivity, reduction in the ability to feel properly, presence of feces, age-related neurological damage, affect the nerves that control the sphincter, anal, side effects of medicines, many common drugs in the elderly, change the consistency of stools and intestinal motility. Dr. Ricardo Mendez, gastroenterologist specializing in digestive health of the elderly, explains, fecal incontinence in the elderly is often multifactorial and dramatically underdiagnosed. Many professionals still treat it only with geriatric diapers, when specific nutritional interventions could solve the problem by the root in most cases. This area of nutritional medicine is significantly neglected, despite its huge therapeutic potential. Donna Helena, 79, shares her experience. I was so ashamed that not even I commented to my doctors. I used diapers for years and stopped participating in activities I loved. That's when I found a gastroenterologist specializing in geriatrics that, in addition to specific exercises, recommended changes in my food focused not only on what to avoid, but especially what it includes. In approximately 3 months following its guidelines, I recovered virtually all the intestinal control. It was like making my life back. Let's know now the 5 foods that can transform your intestinal health and significantly reduce the problem of fecal incontinence. Food number 1, psyllium, the smart regulator. Psyllium heads our list for a convincing reason. It is possibly the most complete and effective intestinal regulator for people over 60 who suffer from fecal incontinence. Rich in soluble mucilate, hemicellulose, lignans and unique bioactive compounds, psyllium offers a revolutionary approach to standardize intestinal function accurately and individualized. How psyllium helps fight fecal incontinence. Bidirectional regulation of stool consistency. Unlike other fibers, the psyllium normalizes both very liquid and very dry feces, creating a ideal consistency that facilitates sphincter control. Protective intestinal gel formation creates a gelatinous matrix that absorbs water in excessive and retains necessary liquids, providing consistent feces volume. Evacuation predictability gradually establishes a regular intestinal pattern and predictable, allowing the elderly to schedule their activities without fear of accidents. Regeneration support of the rectal mucosa, the partial fermentation of the psyllium produces, BC, short-chain fatty gates that nourish and regenerate intestinal mucosa cells. A study published in the American Journal of Gastroenterology accompanied 124 adults over 65 who suffered from moderate to severe fecal incontinence. Participants who consumed 10 grams of psyllium daily, divided into 2 doses, for 12 weeks showed an average reduction of 63% in episodes of incontinence, significant improvement in stool consistency and increased quality of life related to intestinal function. Dr. Fernando Silva, gastroenterologist and researcher in neurogastroenterology, explains, psyllium has a unique feature that sets it apart from all others: fibers, your intelligent standardization capacity of intestinal transit. While the most fiber has a unidirectional effect, or accelerate or slow traffic, the psyllium adapts to the predominant conditions of the intestine. In cases of feces, liquids, absorbs excess water. In cases of constipation, it retains water and form a lubricating gel. This versatility makes it the ideal agent for fecal incontinence, which often alternates between these two extremes. Mr. Jose, 82, shares his transformation. I lived in constant anxiety, never knowing when I would have an accident. No longer left home for long periods and I always sought to know where the nearest bathroom was. My doctor suggested that I take psyllium daily, explaining that it was not just to release or arrest the gut, but to regulate it. In about 3 weeks, I started to notice that my gut was working more predictably. After 2 months, the episodes of incontinence had dramatically reduced. Today I can leave home without that constant fear. It was a change that returned my freedom. How to incorporate psyllium into the diet. Progressive dose. Start with 5 grams, approximately 1 tablespoon, daily, divided into 2 sockets, gradually increasing to 10 grams, according to tolerance. Proper hydration. Each dose should be consumed with at least 250 milliliters of water, or other liquid, fundamental for the psyllium to perform its effect properly. Strategic moment, preferably consumed 30 minutes before the main meals, allowing form gel to the stomach before other foods entry. Consistency on time, keeping the same times daily helps to establish a predictable intestinal rhythm, fundamental to regain control. Nutritionist Dr. Claudia Ferreira suggests, to maximize the benefits, I recommend what I call climbing technique. Start with 2.5 grams twice a day, for a week, then increase to 3.5 grams twice a day in the second week, reaching 5 grams twice a day in the third week. This progression allows the intestinal microbiota adapts gradually, minimizing effects such as gases or abdominal discomfort. Important tip: pure cycine chews, without the addition of sugars or flavorings. The product should contain only the shells of the seeds of Plantago ovatomoids, ensuring maximum active soluble mucilate. Food number 2, yogurt with specific probiotics, the microbiota restorer. Yogurt with specific probiotics represents a powerful intervention for fight fecal incontinence in people over 60. Rich in strains, strategic bacterials, bioactive proteins, bioavailable calcium and peptides, regulators. This food offers a multifaceted approach to restore the intestinal neuromuscular communication and normalize the function of the anal sphincter, as yogurt with specific probiotics helps combat fecal incontinence. Reflection of the intestinal microbiota, restores populations of bacteria producing butyrate, fatty acid essential for the health and function of the anal sphincter. Normalization of colonic traffic time establishes predictable intestinal rhythm, allowing better voluntary control of evacuations. Visceral sensitivity moding optimizes intestinal-brain communication, improving the perception of the need to evacuate before it becomes urgent. Regulation of fecal consistency promotes stool formation with consistency adequate, facilitating sphincter control. A survey published in the Journal of Gerontology, Medical Sciences accompanied 98 adults over 70 who suffered from fecal incontinence. Participants who consumed 200 g of yogurt containing the Bifidobacterium lactis HN019 strains and Lactobacillus acidophilus NCFM daily for 8 weeks presented average reduction of 55% in episodes of incontinence, significant improvement in stool consistency and increased quality of life. Dr. Luciana Costa, gastroenterologist and researcher in intestinal microbiota, explains, fecal incontinence in the elderly often has as component, underlying an intestinal dysbiosis, an imbalance in the composition of the microbiota that changes the production of neuroprotective metabolites such as butyrate. These molecules, they are essential for the proper function of the nerves that control the anal sphincter. Certain probiotic strains, such as those found in specific yogurts, can restore this production, directly improving the sphincter function. At the neurological level, something that conventional drugs cannot do. Donna Marta, 84, shares her experience. I had episodes of incontinence several times a week without any warning. It was devastating to my self-esteem. After consulting several unsuccessful experts, I found a geriatrician who requested analysis of my intestinal microbiota and recommended a type-specific probiotic yogurt for daily consumption. I confess that I was skeptical, but I followed the recommendation. In about a month, I realized that I could feel when I needed to go to the bathroom in advance enough to arrive on time. After 3 months, the accidents were rare. It was like regaining my independence. How to incorporate yogurt with probiotics specific to the diet. Strategic choice, select yogurts containing specifically the strains Bifidobacterium lactis HN019, BB12, Lactobacillus acidophilus NCFM or Lactobacillus rhamnosus GG, which have studies related to intestinal function. Therapeutic dose, consume 200 grams daily, preferably divided into 2 100 grams portions, 1 in the morning fasting and 1 before bed. Preferential integral version, opt for full yogurts, not skim, because the milk fat protects probiotics while passing through the stomach. A temperature consumption, remove from the refrigerator 15 to 20 minutes before consumption, because at room temperature the bacteria are more active. Gastroenterologist Dr. Paulo Mendez recommends, to enhance the effects of probiotics, I suggest the technique of the prebiotic sandwich. Consume a small amount of food rich in soluble fiber, such as slightly green banana or apple, before and after yogurt. This creates ideal conditions for bacteria. Beneficial survive the acidic environment of the stomach and effectively colonize the intestine. Important consideration, avoid consuming yogurt together with medicines, antibiotics, as they can neutralize probiotics. Keep an interval of at least 2 hours between them. Food number 3, chia, the consistency regulator. Chia represents exceptional nutritional intervention for people with more than 60 years suffering from fecal incontinence. Rich in soluble and insoluble fibers in ideal proportion, omega-3 fatty acids, antioxidants and strategic minerals. This ancestral seed offers a multifunctional approach to normalize the function. intestinal and restore evacuation control. How chia helps combat fecal incontinence. Normalizing intestinal gel formation. Chia-soluble fibers absorb up to 12, sometimes its weight in water, creating a gel that normalizes the consistency of feces, making them neither too liquid nor too dry. Regularization of intestinal transit establishes predictable rhythm of evacuations, allowing better planning and control. Support for intestinal mucosa regeneration. Omega-3 fatty acids reduce inflammation of the rectal mucosa, often present in the elderly with incontinence. Microbiota modulation of butyrate-producing promotes the growth of bacteria that produce short-chain fatty acids, essential for neuromuscular health. Of the anal sphincter, a study published in the Journals of Gerontology, Biological Sciences accompanied 112 adults over 68 who had fecal incontinence. Participants who consumed 15 grams of hydrated chia seeds daily for 12 weeks showed an average reduction of 49% in episodes of incontinence, significant improvement in stool consistency and increased qualifying of life related to intestinal function. Dr. Carlos Eduardo, gastroenterologist specializing in intestinal motility, explains, chia has a unique fiber composition that acts as a modulator, intelligent of intestinal transit. Its hydrophilic mucilage creates a gel that serves as mechanical regulator, giving consistency to liquid stools and, simultaneously, lubricating the very dry stools. For the elderly with fecal incontinence, this property is extremely valuable, because the ideal consistency of stools is one of the more important factors to allow the anal sphincter, already compromised, to maintain control. Mr. Antonio, 81, shares his transformation. I suffered from evacuations, unpredictable, sometimes very liquid, sometimes I spent days without going to the bathroom. When the episodes of incontinence happened, it was always without notice. After try multiple drugs with unpleasant side effects, my new doctor suggested something surprisingly simple: add hydrated chia seeds to my daily diet. In a few weeks, I realized that my movements, intestinal, have become more regular and predictable. The most important thing, the feces, they had a consistency that I could control. After 2 months, the accidents had reduced dramatically. It was a simple solution to a problem that I was devastating my social life. How to incorporate chia into the diet. Ideal preparation: moisturize 15 grams, approximately 1 tablespoon, of chia seeds in 150 milliliters of water for at least 15 minutes until it forms a consistent gel. Strategic consumption: divide into 2 daily portions, consumed preferably 30 minutes before breakfast and dinner. Food incorporation: chia gel can be added to yogurts, juices, soups, or puree, facilitating regular consumption. Proper hydration: in addition to the water used to moisturize the seeds, consume by -1 additional glass of water to maximize fiber benefits. Nutritionist Dr. Helena Castro suggests, to enhance the regulatory effect of chia, I recommend the night hair technique. Before bed, prepare the gel, for the next day leaving the seeds in water in the refrigerator. This allows complete hydration and maximum activation of mucilage, enhancing their effects. Normalizers about fecal consistency. Important tip: for elderly with difficulty swallowing or dental problems, seeds can be crushed before hydration, preserving its benefits with a safer texture. Food number 4, dry plums, the intestinal regenerators. Dry plums represent a surprisingly effective intervention for people over 60 who suffer from fecal incontinence. Fiber-rich, specific, sorbitol, chlorogenic acid, antioxidants and phenolic compounds. These Dehydrated fruits offer a multifaceted approach that goes far beyond known laxative effect, acting as true regulators of intestinal health. How dried plums help combat fecal incontinence. Precise regulation of colonic traffic time, establish intestinal rhythm, predictable, fundamental to avoid both constipation and diarrhea conditions, which often alternate in the fecal incontinence of the elderly. Improvement of rectal sensitivity, bioactive compounds stimulate receptors, sensory of the rectum, improving the perception of the need to evacuate and providing proper time to reach the bathroom. Strengthening of the intestinal barrier, specific antioxidants protect and regenerate the intestinal mucosa, often committed to the elderly with incontinence. Optimization of feces composition, produce feces with adequate consistency, neither too hard nor too soft, facilitating the control of the committed sphincter. A survey published in the Journal of Nutrition and Gerontology and Geriatrics accompanied 89 adults over 72 who suffered from fecal incontinence, associated with irregular intestinal pattern. Participants who consumed 6 plums, draughts, approximately 50 grams, daily for 8 weeks presented reduction, average of 43% in episodes of incontinence, normalization of traffic time, intestinal and significant improvement in quality of life. Dr. Mariana Torres, a proctologist specializing in functional disorders of the intestine, explains, dry plums have been erroneously reduced to a simple laxative in popular medicine, when they actually represent a true food, functional for the intestine. Their bioactive compounds, especially acid, chlorogenic and specific fibers, act in a synergistic way to normalize not only the frequency of evacuations, but also their consistency and predictability. For the elderly with fecal incontinence, this regularization is fundamental because it allows adaptation of habits and recovery of control. Donna Teresa, 83, shares her experience. I alternated between days without be able to go to the bathroom and sudden episodes of diarrhea that resulted in accidents. Embarrassing. I tried several medications that either arrested me too much or they loosened too much. That's when my doctor suggested something surprisingly simple. Consume 6 dried plums every day, no longer. At the beginning I doubted that something so simple could work, but I followed the orientation. In 2 weeks, my intestine began to function more predictably. After a month, it had episodes of incontinence. The most impressive was to be able to predict when I would need to go to the bathroom, something I couldn't get for years. How to incorporate dry plums into the diet. Therapeutic dose needs, consume 6 average units, approximately 50 grams, daily, preferably divided into 2 portions of 3 units each. Previous hydration, for better digestibility, leave the plums in water. Warm for 10 to 15 minutes before consumption. Strategic moment, consume 3 units in the morning in fasting and 3 units in the afternoon, not at night, to avoid the need for evacuation during sleep. Potentializing combination, for the elderly with a tendency to more severe constipation, combine with a glass of warm water with fasting lemon juice. Gastroenterologist Dr. Roberto Silva recommends, for the elderly with incontinence, fecal that alternates between constipation and diarrhea, I suggest the thin adjustment technique. Start with 4 daily plums for a week, evaluate the answer and then adjust to 5 or 6 units as needed. This personalization is fundamental, because the intestinal sensitivity varies significantly between individuals. Important consideration, choose added dry plums added, especially sulfites, and without the addition of sugar, preferring organic products, when possible to avoid pesticide residues that may irritate the intestine. Sensitive. Food number 5, integral oats, the intestinal stabilizer, completing our list of transformative foods to combat incontinence. Fecal, we have full oats, a cereal with exceptional properties for health. Intestinal of the elderly. Rich in soluble, avenitramid beta, antioxidants, exclusive, balanced insoluble fibers, high-quality proteins and minerals. Essential, oats offers a complete approach to stabilize the function, intestinal and improve defecation control, as whole oats helps combat fecal incontinence. Bidirectional standardization of intestinal transit, beta-glucana regulate traffic, intestinal in a balanced way, being beneficial both for those who suffer from very frequent evacuations as much as very sparse, strengthening of the intestinal barrier, unique antioxidants, avenitramids, reduce inflammation of the colonic mucosa, improving the health and function of the epithelium. Intestinal, optimized butyrate production, promotes the growth of producing bacteria of this essential fatty acid for the nutrition of colonocytes and neuromuscular function of the rectum. Fecal consistency stabilization, produces well-formed and cohesive stools, facilitating the voluntary control of evacuation even with compromised sphincter. A study published in the European Journal of Gastroenterology and Hepatology, accompanied 94 adults over 70 years old diagnosed with fecal incontinence, participants who consumed 40 grams of full oats daily, in the form of flour, flakes or bran, for 12 weeks showed an average reduction of 45%. In episodes of incontinence, significant improvement in quality of life scores, and normalization of fecal consistency parameters measured by the Bristol scale. Dr. Ricardo Ferreira, gastroenterologist specializing in intestinal motility, explains, oats have what we call triple effect on the intestine, prebiotic, mechanical and anti-inflammatory. The beta-glucan, serve them as a selective food for butyrate-producing bacteria, while the ideal proportion of soluble fibers and insoluble creates appropriate volume and structure for the stool. Simultaneously, exclusive anti-inflammatory compounds protect the rectal mucosa, often inflamed in the elderly with incontinence. This multidimensional action makes it a therapeutic food for complex problems such as fecal incontinence. Mr. Paulo, 85, shares his transformation. I had resigned to use geriatric diapers daily due to the frequent and unpredictable episodes of incontinence. This deeply affected my self-esteem and social life. After consulting a new gastroenterologist, I received a recommendation, surprisingly simple, add whole oats to my breakfast, daily. I started with a small portion and gradually increased as oriented. In approximately a month, I noticed that the evacuations were more formed and predictable. After 3 months, I rarely had accidents and got anticipate the need to go to the bathroom. It was a simple change that transformed completely my quality of life. How to incorporate integral oats into the diet. Progressive therapeutic dose, start with 20 grams daily in the first week, gradually increasing to 40 grams over 3 weeks to allow adaptation. Intestinal, optimized preparation, soak for at least 4 hours or at night before of preparation, activating enzymes that increase the bioavailability of nutrients and reduce anti-nutritional factors. Preferred integral form, prioritize oatmeal and thick flakes or bran, avoiding instant or processed versions that have lost part of the functional properties. Synergic combination, prepare with fermented milk or yogurt enhances prebiotic effects through synergy with probiotics. Nutritionist Dr. Fernanda Alves suggests, to maximize the benefits of oats in fecal incontinence, I recommend the double exposure method. Consume half of the daily dose for porridge or yogurt breakfast, and the other half incorporated into a soup or puree at dinner. This approach maintains the continuous contribution, beta-glucana throughout the day, stabilizing intestinal function in a more consistent. Important consideration, for elderly with chewing or swallowing problems, the oats can be consumed in the form of thin flour or well-cooked flakes, preserving its therapeutic benefits with adequate texture. How to create a complete strategy to combat fecal incontinence. Now that we know the 5 transformative foods for intestinal health, after 60, we will understand how to combine them in a practical strategy and personalized, basic protocol for control of fecal incontinence in the elderly. Upon awakening, 1 glass of warm water, 250 milliliters, 3 previously hydrated dry plums. Breakfast, 40 grams of whole oats prepared with probiotic yogurt, 100 grams, 7.5 grams of previously hydrated chia incorporated into the oats. Mid-morning, 5 grams of psyllium diluted in 250 milliliters of water or natural juice. Lunch, balanced regular meal, 7.5 grams of previously hydrated chia as a complement. Afternoon snack, 3 dry plums, 100 grams of probiotic yogurt. To have lunch, light meal including preparation with oats, soup, puree, 5 grams of psyllium 30 minutes before or after. Gastroenterologist Dr. Fernando Costa recommends, for faster results, in cases of significant incontinence, I suggest an initial intensive protocol of 21 days, where all 5 foods are incorporated daily according to the scheme above. After this period, most patients already experience improvement, noticeable, and can customize the maintenance protocol, prioritizing food that brought better individual results. Adaptations for specific types of incontinence. For incontinence predominantly by urgency, emphasize psyllium and oatmeal. Adjust dose of dry plums, reduce if necessary. Increase proportion of probiotic yogurt. For incontinence associated with constipation, prioritize dried plums and chia. Consume psyllium with more liquid. Include thicker oats with less processing. For diarrhea-associated incontinence, emphasize psyllium and oatmeal. Initially reduce dry plums. Gradually increase the chia to balance consistency. In addition to food, complementary practices, to maximize the benefits. Food for intestinal health, some practices, complementary are fundamental. Specific exercises for the pelvic floor. Pelvic physiotherapist Dr. Cristina Alves emphasizes, regulatory foods, significantly enhance the results of the pelvic floor exercises, and the anal sphincter. I recommend the practice of specific anal contractions, similar, holding the evacuation, for 10 seconds, 10 repetitions, 3 times a day. The combination of this practice with proper feed can restore up to 70% of control in many elderly. Correct positioning for evacuation. Use a small bank to raise your feet during evacuation, simulating the position of switch, reduces the voltage on the pelvic floor and facilitates the emptying. Complete, preventing residual constipation that often contributes to the incontinence. Stress management. The psychologist Dr. Paulo Montero explains, chronic stress activates the intestinal axis, brain in a harmful way, exacerbating symptoms of fecal incontinence. Practices, simple as diaphragmatic breathing for 5 minutes, 3 times a day, can reduce significantly this impact and enhance the benefits of nutritional intervention. When seeking professional help, although the nutritional approach can bring significant benefits, certain signs indicate need for medical evaluation. Sudden onset of fecal incontinence without apparent cause, presence of blood in the stool, incontinence accompanied by intense abdominal pain, associated unintentional weight loss, fever or other systemic symptoms. Geriatra Dr. Henrique Mello emphasizes, The nutritional approach is extremely valuable as part of an integrated strategy, but does not replace medical evaluation. For precise diagnosis and exclusion of potentially serious causes such as cancer, colorectal, inflammatory bowel disease or significant neuropathy. Conclusion: reconquest your control and quality of life. When we complete our journey through the 5 transforming foods to combat fecal incontinence, psyllium, yogurt with specific probiotics, chia, dry plums, and integral oats, it is evident that nature offers us powerful resources to restore dignity and quality of life, even after 60 years. As synthesized Dr. Ricardo Mendez, a specialist in geriatric gastroenterology, fecal incontinence should not be accepted as an inevitable part of aging or treated only with diapers. With the proper nutritional approach, combined with specific exercises and healthy habits, the vast majority of the elderly can recover significant or total part of intestinal control, regaining independence and social confidence. Imagine regaining the tranquility of leaving home without mentally mapping all bathrooms on the route. Visualize yourself participating in social events without the constant concern about embarrassing accidents. Think about rediscovering the freedom to live without your routine dictated by the fear of incontinence. This is not an empty promise, but a concrete possibility for most people who suffer from fecal incontinence after 60 years. And the best starts with simple and accessible choices in your next meal. How about starting today? Maybe with a nutritious porridge of oats and yogurt in the cafe. In the morning, some dry plums like afternoon snack, or a spoon of psyllium. Before dinner, your quality of life and your dignity. Thank you.